Thank you for joining Bowtech Live and the Nate Zielinski Podcast. This is all about education, scouting, building patterns, and being successful on public land in a do-it-yourself style hunt. A huge thanks to all of our partners, including Bowtech Archery, Diamond Archery, Excalibur Crossbows, Vortex Optics, Ford Trucks, Slumberjack, Bass Pro Shops of Denver, Mr. Heater, Turkey Creek Studios, Ripcord Rest, Tight Spot Quivers, and Black Gold Sights. Join us every Monday night live at 7 p.m. Pacific on the Bowtech Archery or Nate Zielinski Facebook pages, bowtecharchery.com, and or the Nate Zielinski YouTube channel. And remember, tag and share this live feed with your friends and bring your big game questions. And here's your host, Nate Zielinski. All right, guys, how we doing? I am Nate Zielinski. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. As always, takes just a minute or two to get all the cameras fired up, make sure everybody's listening, make sure our audio is good, and kind of everything that goes with that. But again, guys, thank you so much for everybody joining us tonight and going live with us. We appreciate it as always. We had an amazing week. Last week we were talking about kind of opening rifles, talking about all the different tags at play. Depending on where you are listening right now or watching in the country, I mean, there's tags going on everywhere. There's muzzleloader tags, there's rifle tags, there's archery tags, whitetails, muleys, pronghorns, elk, bear. This is literally full-blown hunting season nationwide. So we're excited about that. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I know here in Colorado we're broadcasting live. We have one more day of the first elk season. So there's a lot of people that are tagged out, and there's a lot of people kind of hanging on, hoping that tomorrow is an amazing day for them. So we're going to kind of walk you through all of that stuff. And just a quick reminder, again, everybody on Instagram. So I'm pointing right here. We got multiple cameras right in front of me. But everybody on Instagram, we're going to be playing some videos tonight. Again, we say this every week, but if you want to see the videos, jump over to bowtecharchery.com or jump on the Facebook page. You can go to the Bowtech Facebook page or go to bowtecharchery.com. And also everybody even on the social media platform. Again, we're all about education. We're all about building that knowledge point to where you are more successful. We had a very successful week from all the education that we put into it. So the knowledge pays off. But if you have somebody that you want to join tonight, they're not social. I know that my dad, his buddies, and everybody else that I need to get participating in some of this education to be a more successful hunter. None of them are on social media, but most people have access to a computer. So again, you can always watch this on the Bowtech Archery website. So again, bowtecharchery.com. So make sure you jump over there if you want to see all the footage and definitely all the videos that we're going to play tonight. So kind of keep that in mind. Tonight's show, guys, we're going to recap what I had the last 7 days. We had 2 pronghorn hunts as well as a very, very successful elk hunt. So we're going to be talking about the recaps of those hunts. We're going to be talking about youth hunting. I'm joining a great friend and his son this coming Saturday on his very first big game hunt. His very first hunt is going to be an elk hunt. So we're really excited about that. But we're going to talk about youth hunting, the opportunities and things you can do to kind of make it more interesting, entertaining, and successful for the youth. So we're going to be talking about that. I have a little section called Imagine That. So we're going to be talking about that. And the whole idea behind Imagine That is so many people watch these feeds, they do their scouting, but they've never harvested an animal. And we saw that this week in the fullest. I can't tell you how many questions I got on Facebook, how many emails, texts, and even posts that I saw on like Facebook and these social media feeds of people like, hey, we've been hunting for 7 years, we've never got one, and bam, all of a sudden it happened. Bull down, big deer down, wherever the case may be, and not being prepared for it. How do we get it out? Do we know how to skin it? Do we know how to quarter it? Do we know how to get it out? Do we have a plan? So this little section is going to be called Imagine That. Imagine that all of a sudden I'm successful. Am I ready? So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about some unwritten rules if we have time. But like always, guys, if you have questions, comment your questions below. Tag your friends. Share this post. We want this to get as big as possible so we can, again, build that education. But at any point in time, you have questions, make sure you comment them below, and we will answer those questions live as they start coming in. We're going to kind of go roll with our content. But guys, again, you have questions, make sure you send them in. Devin's the producer right here behind the cameras, and Devin will read those questions aloud. So again, make sure you comment if you have questions, comments, concerns. If you're getting prepared for a hunt and you have questions about that hunt, I can definitely do my best to answer those as we go forth. But we're going to recap this last week. Again, we joined you last week, Tuesday. On that following Wednesday, I hit the field with my father-in-law, Dean, and a great friend of mine, part of the Blosser family. These guys are world-class fishermen from Wisconsin. I've been fishing with them for probably over a decade. Great friends. And Jeremiah came out on his very first pronghorn hunt. So I had Dean and Jer on their very first pronghorn pronghorn hunt. We were hunting in eastern Colorado. We were very successful. Now we're going to roll over and show some of this footage. We cut the audio out, so I'm going to talk over this footage to kind of explain what was going on. But we're going to roll to that. Again, if you're on Instagram, jump over right now. Jump over to the Bowtech Archery, .com or the Bowtech Archery Facebook page, and you'll see that. So we're starting to play it right now. So on this particular hunt, the whole idea was Eastern Plains, Colorado. We had a lot of little kind of canyon lands or little ditches, drainages. So right there, first thing in the morning, all we would do is glass and find these bucks out in the open. And as the day went on, they would start dropping into these little drainages, dropping into these little fingers. And if you didn't have a good idea where they were at, you were forced to kind of walk around and almost jump shoot them. So first thing in the morning, all we did was long-range glassing, sitting on hillsides, sitting on knobs, and glassing for miles. I mean, half the time we couldn't tell if it was bucks, does, or whatever the case may be. All it was doing was glassing from afar, glassing miles and miles, and finding as many pronghorns as you possibly could. Once you found those, you kind of watch them, you'd see them drop over in these small little ditches. The second they dropped over into the ditch, dropped over into the knolls, you can assume they were bedding down and or just kind of tucking in for the day and just slowing down their movement. So once we located a lot of these animals in these small drainages, all we basically would do is walk along, get close to those, and just kind of very slowly peer over the hill and get on them. In this particular situation, on the hunt you're watching right here, this is Dean's hunt, and we actually got on this buck, pretty decent buck, bunch of does with him, and he went over that hill you just saw a second ago. Devin, stop it there for a second. So just literally 2 seconds ago, we just watched this buck go over the hill. So we have 2 does and a buck disappear over the hill, and that's from a long distance away. So we start sneaking up to get closer, and lo and behold, we get to the other side of the hill, and the 3 pronghorns that we literally, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes ago watched drop over, all of a sudden they're gone. But as we come over, we have more animals. I believe now we had 5 animals, 2 bucks and 3 does. So we gained 2 animals. I think it was a whole different group. I think one group of animals peered off to the other side, or kind of bolted off, and then these other animals were just there, just coming actually off of a water hole, coming up into this drainage to bed down. Hit play again there. So we're literally on top of this hill, literally almost within archery range. I mean, we're sitting here, I believe, 80, 100 yards away, and we're just kind of watching them and trying to get a feel for it. Because again, the buck that we had been studying and watching kind of disappeared on us, and now we have 2 bucks here. We're looking at them both, and the nice thing is these animals actually grew. So the particular buck that we ended up harvesting right here is actually bigger than any of the ones we've seen. So we let these animals separate. The buck separated off from the does, which was nice, giving it 1 animal to watch, 1 animal to follow. We waited until the shot was just perfect. The animal started to look away and actually get ready to bed down for the most part in that drainage. And right when that animal bedded down, we snuck up and made a flawless shot. Dean absolutely hammered this buck. In this situation, we're using a rifle, but to be totally honest with you, archery equipment would have been just as successful on this particular hunt because, again, we timed it right. We watched them from afar. We let them bed down, snuck right up on top of them, and got it done. So again, a great stock by Dean and a great shot by Dean as well. So that was the very first hunt. That's a real big buck, 14 and a half, 15 inches, good cutters, good turns, just a great animal. So hopefully you watch that. But again, the concept of that first hunt was early morning, glassing from afar, and that's really what we did on kind of both of these hunts, was just find as many animals as possible in the morning, and once they bedded down, kind of chase them from that point on. This afternoon, again, we harvested that buck, got it cleaned out. Then we went out with Jer. Again, this is Jeremiah's first pronghorn hunt ever, and he was on absolutely cloud 9 because, again, when we're sitting there first thing in the morning, glassing from afar, it's a pronghorn hunt. You see a lot of animals. We probably saw, I don't know, 70, 80 animals throughout the course of the morning there, or the course of his hunt. So as we're glassing, he's coming from thick woods as a whitetail hunter in Wisconsin. So as we start glassing, I mean, he's like, there's one there, they're over there, here's one, there's, and they're everywhere because it's pronghorn hunting. You can see 10 miles, and we're looking, through great vortex optics. So he was just on cloud 9. There were so many animals, and he's looking at bucks, and we're trying to explain, hey, you want, tall antlers and length and good cutters and, yada, yada. And he's just like, man, it's just overwhelmed. Then we found a buck later in the day that's a little wider, a little curled, and got really kind of unique, almost separated cutters on this particular buck. So kind of unique, really cool looking buck. Nice buck. Really for anybody, let alone a very first pronghorn. So we found this buck. We started to make a stock. So Devin, turn this one on. And as you watch this footage, guys, this was 100% an archery style hunt with a gun. As we went forth on this hunt, these animals were running around and they were actually chasing each other still. Very, very ruddy type animals. As these animals were running around chasing, the bucks are chasing each other. And as we actually sneak up on this hill, so these animals are kind of in and out of these little fingers on the side of this mountain. And as we approach these animals, we're kind of sneaking up, getting closer. And all of a sudden, more animals kept appearing. I don't know, we were probably on this animal for 10 minutes while we were watching them. In the course of that 10 minutes, I think we gained 2, if not 3 more animals to that herd. So we're literally sitting there, and you can see a buck right now coming into the group. It seems like every couple steps that we took, another buck was coming over the kind of horizon, dropping down into this herd of these does and these bucks, and they're all chasing each other around. And to be totally honest with you, they're all pretty decent animals. And at one point right here, I think we're 150, 200 yards away, and Jared kept wanting to sit down and lay down to get a shot, to get really comfortable, and when he would do that, he would disappear under the hill, and you couldn't see the animal. So standing up, you could see him all day long. Kneeling down or sitting down, you didn't have a chance to really see these type of animals. So kind of different in that type situation, for the fact that we knew we had to let the animals move, or we had to move to really present that shot. And that happens in a lot of situations, to where everything seems right, but you just can't get that shot for whatever reason. Archery equipment, it really happens a lot when, you have a clear shot, but you have branches and you can't get the arc of the arrow. So things happen regardless. But this situation, we let these animals actually get up in this drainage. So right where you just saw in that last video, we let them get way up higher in that drainage, actually disappear out of sight. And then we went straight ahead, kind of crowning around that hill to sneak up. And this is kind of a cool thing. So if you stop it right there for a second, Devin. So you can see right there, I don't know if we can back up a hair, but you just saw me holding a pair of shooting sticks. So Jared just came over the top of the hill right there. So that's actually ahead. Go backward just a skosh. Putting Devin to the test. So right there, walking up the hill, guys, and I'm holding a pair of shooting sticks. So Jared's got his rifle. He's got a 300 Ultra Mag, and I got a pair of bipod shooting sticks. Unfortunately, when I left the truck, I grabbed the shooting sticks that were short. I think these are 36-inch shooting sticks. So we actually get to the top of this hill right here, and I can just see the buck's antlers. I can just see his horns, and we're like 60 yards away. I mean, full-blown archery equipment. 60 yards away, the buck's bedded down. I can just see his horns moving around. And Jared gets down on those sticks to shoot, and same type thing as before. He goes, man, all I see is hillside. So from standing up, you can get a shot, but when he gets lower, no shot. So I actually set down the shooting sticks, kind of crawled back over to Devin, and stole his tripod. So when you see me coming up this hill, first thing I have is shooting sticks, and then you'll see kind of a cut here real quick, because we had to turn off the camera while I was stealing stuff. Had to take the camera off of the tripod, and I'd actually walk up with the tripod, because the tripod would go all the way up to 6 foot. So now all of a sudden, Jared can stand and still have that frame of reference, or that height, but still have stability to take that shot. So hit play, Devin, we'll kind of continue. So walking up the hill, shooting sticks in hand, and then I actually switch over. Now you can see I actually have the tripod. And while we're moving around, we actually ruined the whole hunt. So we're sitting there switching around. I'm trying to build the tripod up so we have height. And the buck takes off running. He sees us. So I'm setting up the tripod, and that buck all of a sudden looks up, and I'm like, oh, he sees us. And all of a sudden, when I could see him kind of relax bedding, all of a sudden now this goat is up, and he is hightailing. Luckily, curiosity got the cat. So that buck stopped just on top of that hill. Jared was still on the tripod following him. When that buck stopped, slam, made a very, very successful shot. And you can see it right there. Great buck, wide, those real good cutters. Just a really, really neat buck, especially for that first animal. But really wide, really good cutters on that. So it was an exciting hunt. But again, things like that you got to be prepared for. We're on the total eastern flatland. You never would think that things are going to kind of come into play that you don't imagine. You think you can lay down anywhere, sit down anywhere, and literally made the small mistake of grabbing the wrong shooting sticks. I got a couple of different shooting sticks. You can see it right there. Great buck. Yeah, and that was a fun hunt. That was the very first pronghorn for Jeremiah, so we're excited about that. But look, I grabbed the wrong shooting sticks and didn't have the height. Things like that people think about. How many times does that come into play on a hunt? Probably very rarely. 5%, 10%. You don't have the right adequate shooting sticks just per se. But we made the adjustment, grabbed a tripod, and got it done. But again, things like that happen. We adjusted on the fly and made it happen. But multiple times throughout the hunts of both those pronghorns, we had that situation again, because our plan, glass afar, once they bedded down and got any smaller drainages, make our stalk and sneak up on them. And so many times as we came over the crest of this hill, it was that situation of needing to be elevated to take the shot. And I'll tell you what, I was on an elk hunt this week, which you're going to see here in just a second, where we had almost that same thing happen to where, you know, again, from the eye, the hunter's eye, my eye, the perspective, you can see everything clear as day. But when you lower down literally 2 feet to a shooting position, all of a sudden things change. You don't have the same angle. You don't have any of the visibility, the vision, whatever the case may be, and things kind of change it up from there. So things happen and it comes into play. So again, pronghorn, regardless, it was fun. But again, the major educational points from that, everybody tends to go pronghorn hunting. Everybody tends to see a buck and immediately chase it. Try to glass as much as you can. Get a good reference of where most of your animals are at, just for the sake of if heat comes, as they move to water. Things happen and these animals move around and a lot of times disappear on you. If you have a rough frame of mind at where they're going to be, where they're going, it's going to give you the upper hand to make that approach. Have that education, really add length to your day and add animals to your day, because again, you're going to know where they're at. You're not going to blow those hunts. So moral of the story, good glass, Vortex Optics, glass them from afar, finding as many animals as absolutely possible, putting them to bed or resting them or knowing where they're at, and then going forth throughout the course of the day and checking on those individual animals in those cuts, in those drainages, and making a successful stalk on those animals. It also really allows you to play your wind. You know, if you know there's 4 or 5 bucks in a certain valley, you can get your wind in the right direction. You can hunt them accordingly instead of kind of hopscotching around and getting winded and blowing them out. Again, you can make the most of your day. So that's kind of something to think about there. The last hunt of this week, again, while we're talking recaps, same person, Jeremiah Blosser, a good friend of mine. So he was out, we were talking about this the other day, maybe 3-4 years ago, on a muzzleloader hunt, and it was his first taste of really a rutting experience on elk. He was successful. He came back for this, and I'll tell you, the conditions were very, very similar. So we're going to throw to Jeremiah's elk hunt here as we kind of watch these videos. Again, if you're on Instagram, jump over. You want to hear this. So here we are, literally talking to Jeremiah. We're on this elk hunt. We're sitting in the same area where I harvested a bull as well as Jared harvested a bull years ago. And as we're sitting here talking, there's literally a bull 400 yards away from us. So literally live right here as I'm showing this, you can see we're talking, shooting this video, and I have that bull right there in the phone scope 400 yards away. So we're talking about it. This is actually, oh, stop right there, Devin. So we're going to freeze it right here. Almost. We'll go back.
Well,
hang on, guys. There we go. So we're freezing it right there. So, guys, we're sitting there literally talking. You can see us just looking through the phone scope. We're judging this animal. This is Friday morning. The season opener started Saturday. So, literally, we are 24 hours from the start of the season. And we're looking at this bull. And it's a great bull. So, that's the bull right there in the phone scope. And we're talking about it. And he's like, man, I've shot one bull. I by no means want to be the guy that's so picky and goes home empty-handed. He goes, killing an elk for me, it's about the meat. I want to have the food. He goes, but also, he goes, I would love to have, you know, as big a bull as possible. It's like everybody else, you know. If you have the opportunity of shooting a giant bull, more power to you. You should definitely do it. Over the course of the last couple days, while sitting there with Jeremiah, I think we ended up seeing, I think we scouted 3 days before the season, and I think we had 15 good bulls located. Good bulls being 280 to 310. You know, so we had just a pile of really good animals located. And we're sitting there that morning and we're talking about, hey, you know, this is the same drainage I killed a bull in. That also drainage is the same drainage that this big bull came out of. So there's big bulls in the area. We're watching this bull right here who's just a little over 300 inches. It'd be an easy stock. And he's like, man, I'm like, is that the one we're going for tomorrow? And he's just pulling his hair out in that situation. And the reason for it is, if that's the bull we're going for, we're going to stay with that bull all day, put him to bed, watch him come up out of bed, and stay with him until it's dark. Go back out, get our hunting gear, and come back first thing in the morning, and hopefully be right back on top of that bull. So we're sitting here literally watching that bull that you see in the phone scope, and we're just like, you know, I'm like, well, what's it going to be? And at that point in time, Jared says, you know what? We think we have a good pattern on him. He goes, let's go check one more spot. We'll check one more spot this evening, see what we see, and we'll make the call there. So almost somewhat of a gamble, but right there you can see that bull. He's walking away in the phone scope. We have him. He's dialed in. He's a great 6x6 bull. And Jared said, you know what? Let's take our chances. Let's check one more spot. So as we played here, you'll see as we walk in the afternoon, probably 4 p.m., we walk into our final spot of scouting. We always call it the last day of practice. And I walk into the last day of practice, and we find some more things. Listen to this. Turn up the volume.
They're everywhere. Too good to be true. Let's get out of here.
Let's pause it there real quick. So literally right there, guys, you just heard it. Hopefully you turned up your volume for that little piece right there. Our last day of scouting. So it's the last evening. We know we passed up a 300-inch bull, and now we're in this next drainage. It's that evening, and the bulls are losing their mind. Now, I hunted, with Tim Glom. You watch us chase Ricky, and all these bulls are in archery. I had multiple days in the archery season. 30 days I probably was in the field, and I was in a lot of rut activity. To be totally honest with you, this rifle season, I had more bugling and more true rutting than I had all the archery season, without a doubt. That type of situation right there, we had 7 bulls, at least. We think there was 7, I should say, just screaming, just losing their mind. These bulls are just going off. You saw in that 30 seconds how much bugling you heard and how loud it was. When we sat there for an hour, hour and a half, you're probably hearing 200 bugles, 300 bugles an hour. These bulls were literally running hard, and we didn't really know what was happening. We knew that there was dominant bulls. We knew that we had somewhat of a herd bull and satellite bulls around it. We didn't know exactly what was happening, but we knew we had a lot of animals. At one point in time, we saw a couple bits and pieces of different bulls, and we made the call there to back out. Now, that was a touchy call because a lot of people are like, man, do you really know where they're going? Do you really know what's in the herd? But we had so many animals bugling and so many animals in the area, our winds were getting a little sketchy, and we didn't want to get busted. So we backed out early in the evening. We backed out at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and then came back in the next morning, literally walked into the woods, and we're probably where those bulls were at the night before. They probably moved 200 yards. So we literally walk into the woods at 4 a.m. Shooting light is like 6:45 or whatever it was. So we're 2 hours and 30 minutes, 2 hours and 45 minutes ahead of ourselves. We get in the woods, and literally they're right there bugling, just screaming. So we literally laid down, tried to take a nap, and it was hard to do because these animals were screaming so much. So while we're literally sitting there trying to take a nap, these bulls are bugling 150 yards, 200 yards away. It was absolutely incredible, and it's nerve-wracking because part of you says we got them. We're 200 yards away. We just got to wait for an hour to go by, and we got them. And then the other part of you is thinking, hey, it's the truth. We're public land hunters. We're not on a ranch. We're not on private property. We're sitting there like, you'd see almost stars through the horizon, through the trees. You're like, is that a headlamp? Is that another hunter? You're so worried that something's going to go wrong. A bear's going to walk through. A lion's going to walk through. Another hunter. The wind's going to change. You're that close to animals that early in the day. It's nerve-wracking to know what's going to happen. And it's funny. So, this is hard to see, but imagine... my hand right here is kind of a ridge on a forest line. We're literally laying down here, napping right here. All these bulls are right here. As it got light, we were so paranoid about a wind, we played hopscotch up and down this ridge for 45 minutes before we actually are going to see what happens in the video. To be totally honest with you, we moved around for 45 minutes. Had we sat still where we were originally sitting for 2.5 hours in the dark, if we had sat there and moved 10 yards ahead, we probably actually would have had a better shot than we had actually when we were out here in the field chasing him. But regardless, it was fun. We played cat and mouse for a long time. This harem that we're on actually turns out to be what we would guess probably being 3 harems. When we came over the hill, what we thought was 7 bulls actually turned into probably 12 to 14 bulls, and this herd was spread out about 300 yards. So we literally had 300 yards of bugling bulls and cows spread out. And the reason we're thinking it was 3 harems, we're not positive of that, but we essentially had 3 herd bulls kind of spread out. We had a very dominant bull kind of high left, a very dominant bull which we actually walked up on right ahead of us, and then another bull kind of up on the other side. When we first came over the hill to this, we're sneaking up, as you're going to see in this video. We actually spooked what is the most dominant bull of the herd. We kind of, walking up, and we're on that same hill, just like we talked about with pronghorn. So we're literally walking down this hill. It's just a slow drop into a valley, so just kind of going downhill. So as you're walking, all of a sudden you see a tip of an antler, and you see an ear, then you start to see a head. And the only way you can keep seeing, especially to hunt and shoot, is to keep going forward. So we're just slowly kind of going through this wide open area, and just starting to gain bits and pieces, and all of a sudden, we're seeing 10 animals, 20 animals, 30 animals. It just keeps growing. And then all of a sudden, the worst case situation, we're sneaking, and we got our eye on this kind of herd bull over here, and all of a sudden, right up ahead of us, here comes the big rack. So we're literally sitting there, and all of a sudden, out of the grass came nothing but giant antlers. And it was a mega bull that was actually kind of up on the hill higher, coming towards its bedding grounds, which we were coming from. And we actually spooked that big bull, and he went tearing off down the hill and kind of sucked and disappeared away, just screaming down the valley. And he got all 100 animals in this valley all riled up. We started cow calling, settled them down, and then went to town trying to figure out what was what. So we'll play the video now, and you can kind of see us as it unfolds. Again, just kind of craziness here as we're going forth. So right now we're on that same cut. We're listening to the bugling bulls, and where we are at the next morning right there is just outside of where we had all those animals bedded. So we're sneaking up right now, and that big herd bull just took off. He literally was just ahead of us 60 yards. In that situation right there. So we put Jared up to a stump. Again, normally would be laying down or on shooting sticks, but in this situation, it was too low. So when he wanted to lay down, just like the pronghorn, couldn't do so. He was forced to shoot off of a stump just to gain some elevation. And as you start seeing zoom in, same thing. The tripod didn't have the right angle. So unfortunately, we made Devin freehand it. Kind of creates some very moving action trying to get on these animals. But you can see everywhere ahead of you, just animals, just elk. Elk to the left, elk to the right, elk walking from right in front of us, elk out in the front. And the worst part about this whole thing is they're all bugling. So we literally have bulls bugling to our left, bugling to our right, bugling ahead of us. And a lot of these bulls were big 6s. So literally we're sitting there, and Jared's like, I see a big 6, great swords. And I'm like, I see a big 6. And, even Devin, with the camera, he's like, man, I got a bull over here to the right. And the animals are already nervous. We've already cow called to settle them down. So we know we have limited amount of time. We know we got, 30 seconds, a minute to make the call. So we finally pick what we all assume is the biggest bull. Jared's laying down there, and I actually, I looked right over his shoulder, looked right down the gun, and I say, Jared, wrong animal, wrong animal. And he's looking at one bull, and what we determined was the biggest bull of the group was actually off to the left. So we told Jared, hey, back up. You're looking at the wrong one. And all of a sudden he pans over and he goes, oh, now I see it. I see the right one. So regardless, so right here, we're finally on the same page. Devin, myself, and Jared are on the same page. So you can see that bull walking from left to right. So now we're on the bull. Again, a lot of sticks in the way. Again, not ideal filming conditions. But the bull's walking off to the right. He finally steps away from all those cows, which was a nightmare. Had so many animals balled up. We had to wait for the ideal situation. But the bull finally stepped off. Shot just went off. You can see the animals kind of running around. He just absolutely hammered this animal. Again, bull finally stepped free. All the cows were finally out of the way. Took the shot. Animal just pretty much piled up right away. And big bull down. So, again, talk about a fun situation, but also a very hectic situation. But you can see right there, there's this big giant 6. Actually got a broken sword on his left. But just a monster mega bull right there. And Jer is absolutely on cloud 9 in that type situation right there. But a big old bull hit the ground regardless. And it was exciting. And again, just talk about big numbers of animals. Just bull and cow and the whole rut situation and harems just going crazy in that situation. So guys, you just saw that footage. And again, so many people I don't think ever think about this, the craziness that can happen. We all hope for these big rut situations, but in a secondary rut, again, when the cows that didn't get bred go back into heat, the bulls play their odds. So these bulls gather as many cows as possible and get these massive harems, just hoping that some of these animals go back into heat and they can breed these animals at that particular time. You get into some craziness. And again, we came over the hill and we got 12, 14 bulls, 100 cows. And if these animals were calm, it would be fine. If we were sitting on an adjacent ridge, we could literally just sit there, and you can see there's the final pose with that big old bull. You can see Jared there on the camera. So again, just awesome and exciting. But everybody wants this situation. We were rushed. I mean, we literally came over the hill and 12, 14 bulls, 100 cows, and they're spooked. They're panicked. We were right on top of them. It was windy. It wasn't an ideal situation. And just as frantically as possible, we're trying to decide which bull's best, which bull's going to present an opportunity. And you have 100 animals in a small valley. Again, it took a couple minutes for that bull to finally step away from the cows and be independent to where we had a shot. So much going on. I mean, literally, hair rising, exciting, but also, nerve-wracking. You're nervous. You're wanting it to come true. You're hoping it's going to come true. Again, just a rush of emotion. And, we actually have some videos with Jerry. We're going to release them here just a little bit. And Jerry was supposed to be here, but he actually ended up flying home just so we tagged out that first day. So he flew home yesterday back to his wife and kids. And, again, on Cloud 9, so he's not here to share this with you. But, we talked about it. So Jerry came originally on a muzzleloader tag years ago, right in the peak rut here in Colorado. So these bulls were bugling, screaming, and then we hunted Saturday during the rifle season, and Jared, after the hunt, he goes, I think we had more rut activity during this rifle season than I did during the muzzleloader season. And that's something we always want to talk about. Again, obviously, you're watching this on Bowtech Archery. We're bow hunters at heart. And obviously this was a rifle hunt, and people always bring that up, and they say, man, the opportunity of tags and seasons. And this is something that a lot of people don't think about. Again, in most states, you can downgrade weapon. In Colorado, we can. We can use archery equipment during the rifle hunt as long as we still wear orange. So as long as we have an orange hat and an orange vest, and we follow all the laws as far as that safety equipment goes, you can downgrade that weapon and use a bow, for example. The opportunity that exists are a couple things. And this is something we always want to talk about. So again, during archery hunts in some of these type units, if you're in an unlimited tag, so you have an area of the state that you're hunting, there might be a situation where as many hunters as buy tags go there, it's legal for to do that. But if you're in a draw type area, there's a lot of situations where a unit might have 100 hunters or 200 hunters in that particular unit. And all of a sudden a first rifle tag, which a lot of times is considered more of a premium tag, usually it only takes the same amount of points to draw, but you might have a third or a quarter of those hunters. So like this type unit here where you have 200 tags or 150 tags for archery hunting, and all of a sudden you have 50 tags for a rifle tag. So if you draw that first rifle tag, even though you're an archery hunter, you're going to have less people in the woods, which obviously is a plus. You're not running into other hunters. So we love seeing that. Then the other opportunity that you have in a lot of these different units is the opportunity to have a more mega rut type situation. If you're in an area that's notorious for having warm weather or a late rut, you can hunt in October where you're almost guaranteed rut activity. You can go out there with a bow, and you're almost guaranteed to have more bugling, more cow calling, again, more just that rut type activity. So again, things to think about. But regardless, that was the longest recap of all history. So again, I apologize about the length of that. But again, we had some incredible hunts this week, and we wanted to share them with you. Because again, we've been doing this education since May. If you're one of the viewers and listeners that's been watching us this entire time, we've been scouting, doing our education since May. The reason we do that is because every time we step foot in the woods, our odds dramatically go up. We are successful, and I'm successful in the woods 100% due to the overall involvement that I have through scouting and education and learning these animals going into this hunt. Every hunt I go on, I have a wealth of knowledge about land, about the resource, about the animal, about daily habits and activities going into it, to where literally I just put myself in the way of success. I literally just line myself up to where I know I'm going to have that successful hunt. So again, we walk you through these recaps, so hopefully you've been following it long enough to where you understand understand the education that we've done, and then you watch it come play on these animals and on the success of a hunt, just due to that education. Again, I think everybody can have that successful hunt as long as you put the energy and time into a good scouting trip. 60% of your time scouting, 40% of your time hunting, and more cases than not, you're going to lead to that successful hunt because of that education. Now, guys, we got a couple questions. We'll answer them now as we kind of go forth.
First off, people want to know what kind of gun is that sitting in front of you?
What kind of gun is that sitting in front of me, guys? As we go forth, we've got a couple of rifle tags coming up. Now, the man behind the camera, the guy that you don't see, is Devin Menino. He has got a second rifle tag, and this will be his weapon of choice going into the later rifle tags. I have some tags available. More than likely, I'll be using archery equipment, but regardless, it's gun season, so we're talking about that. And we have a youth hunt coming up, so we're going to talk about that as well. This is a Remington 700 action that has been built by Tag'em Gunworks. Mr. Ryan built this gun. You're actually going to have him on this feed at some point in time talking about it. It is a 338 Remington Ultra Mag is the actual caliber that this rifle is shooting. Again, it's been very custom built. Again, got the fluted barrel, got the custom brake on it. We're topping it with a 35mm Razor HD Vortex optics with an MOA turret. And again, guys, this is an absolutely unbelievable machine right here. But again, it's a 338 Ultra Mag. Very, very similar ballistics on a lighter grain bullet to even what a 338 Lapua would be doing. So guys, again, ballistic coefficiency, this rifle is amazing. Main reason for the 338, everybody says, man, that's a lot of power. The idea with the 338 is to buck the wind, nothing more than that. Again, so many people look at that and say, man, that's a giant gun. Do you really need that much power? And it has nothing to do with the power. We love the power for shooting a flat, very ballistic coefficient bullet. But more than anything, in some of these hunts, you might encounter 30-mile-an-hour winds, 40-mile-an-hour winds, and we want to be able to shoot a 250 grain bullet just simply more to buck the wind. Again, everybody talks about the 7mm ballistics and all these other calibers. And more than anything, we want to throw a major piece of lead to hopefully have less interference from the wind, making a more straight shooting and more dependable shot. So again, we're going to talk a lot more about that in the coming weeks. But again, if you're questioning it right there, it's a custom-built gun by Tag'em Gunworks. A good friend of mine named Ryan. We'll have him on the feed. But again, it's the action of a Remington 700. Then everything has been tricked out from that point on. You're going to see it in action with Devin Menino coming up here this next week on another rifle elk hunt. So, but again, it's phenomenal.
We had a chance to sight that in after those pronghorn hunts, and it was actually a pretty gusty wind by the time we got to
Yep.
that.
Yeah, we were
at 800 yards.
We were shooting steel at 800 yards with factory ammo. Again, to show how square that bolt head is and how accurate that gun is with that MOA turret. We were shooting factory ammo. Again, straight bought at the store, factory ammo. And Devin was putting rounds 6-inch circle at 800 yards in a 20-mile-an-hour wind. So it's a pretty phenomenal gun for sure. And Devin, you don't necessarily come from a long family history of shooting rifles.
No, mostly bow hunting.
Mostly bow hunting. So again, yeah, Devin shot a rifle a handful of times, and third shot was ring and steel at 800. So it's a pretty phenomenal gun.
All right, our next question: how do you prefer to hunt elk in the dark timber?
The biggest thing with how do I hunt elk in the dark timber? Number of reasons there. Number one, I almost always am doing everything I can to hunt them to and from the dark timber. Most cases where these animals are in the dark timber, I'm going to say is a bedding zone. So I'll do everything I can to make the most of that 15 minutes, 30 minutes of that time when they're in the feeding grounds or on their way to and from the dark timber. And I'll make the most of that situation there. If I do have to hunt dark timber, let's say I'm just in an area that's loaded with dark timber, most cases I'm going to put a tree stand on a trail. And again, it kind of falls back right to that daily migration. I'm hoping to catch them on a major trail going to and from certain areas in that dark timber. My least hope or my last goal would ever be to actually stalk them in the timber. Dark timber is so noisy. It's so hard to make that approach on them. Generally speaking, when you're trying to stalk a bull or a cow in dark timber, you do more harm than good. Most of the time, you're just going to push the animals around, just leading for more of a a brain injury, we'll call it that. It's just going to hurt your head because all you're going to do is push animals around. You're going to hurt patterns, and you're going to be guessing every single day. Where'd they go? Where'd they end up? As opposed to building a pattern. So number one, I try to hunt them in meadows or openings to and from the dark timber to their bed grounds. If I am in that dark timber, I'm going to try to find a major trail or a major, avenue of transportation daily or migrations. I'm going to put a tree stand up and try to hunt them as they're moving around. My last option would ever be to pursue them in that dark timber because it's too hard to sneak up on them per se. So again, outside the timber, number one, two, a tree stand. Third option would actually be to stalk at those type animals, unless I have major snow. The only time I really find myself in dark timber, to be totally honest with you, in any situation, is if I find a mega bull. In 3 weeks, if I find Ricky and he's walking around and I know 100% these tracks in the snow is him, I will pursue an animal into dark timber because I know I'm following one set of tracks. I know I'm not following a whole herd. I know right where that animal's going. I can see as these tracks get fresh, so I know I'm getting close. And I feel like that gives me some hope to stalk the dark timber. But really, only in snow and only when I'm on a fresh track would I, generally speaking, almost ever be in that dark timber. So just kind of the thoughts on there. Got any more questions, Devin?
We're good right now.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, guys. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about, we had a lot of questions here, things we're going to talk about. We want to talk about youth hunting. Now, I have a lot of stuff to talk about youth hunting, so we're actually going to save a good portion of that for next week. But this Saturday, I'm going to be joining a good friend of mine named John. It's actually his son's first big game hunt. I do this to a lot of the friends that I have. If you're a really close family friend of the family or tight line or anybody that's we're majorly involved with, most of the kids, as they turn 12, I always offer to try to join them in the woods for a day or two. And again, there's nothing I enjoy better than being a part of a good youth hunt. You see a youth going in the woods for the first time after big game. There's just nothing better in the world than that. So Jonathan's been prepped. He's been shooting the rifle. He's been excited. He's going to the woods after a bull on Saturday. I'll be joining him and beyond excited about that. But the things we want to talk about real quick with regard to youth hunts. I know John and I have been talking about this, trying to get prepared. Number one thing is always think about the youth hunt. Put more energy into a youth hunt than you would ever do your own. Because again, you got to make sure it's the ideal situation for the youth. And that's probably one of the biggest things we see mistakes for. So many people get their kids involved in the woods and it really turns into their hunt, when in reality it's all about the youth. So when you're thinking about that, if it's a situation of you don't want to make your kid or your buddy's kid wake up at 2 a.m. If that's not their style, if that's going to make it non-entertaining for them, hunt the afternoons. You go out in the morning, do your education, find some animals, and hunt the afternoons when you can, get in the woods at 3 o'clock. It's warm, and it's more entertaining. Again, it's about the youth, not about you. So again, we talk about afternoon hunts being ideal because again, they don't have to wake up as early. It's not going to be as cold. That's one of the number one things. So many kids that get started in hunting, even though manufacturers make the clothing for them, so many times they don't have it. Kids grow out of clothes so fast, so people don't invest in the clothes. And all of a sudden you find your kid freezing to death, and that's not enjoyable. You don't want to go out there when you're cold. So think about those type situations. So again, if hunting in afternoon is better, that's great. But the two things that we talk about, and probably the most thing that we're going to talk about right now, is actually making the shot for a youth. Again, I got a long list of stuff we're going to talk about next week's on the show. I just ran out of time today. But when you have a youth out there, when a youth right now is actually going to go out on a hunt. So I got my rifle right here. It is 100% loaded. We have got nothing in a magazine. Again, we are free and clear. Very, very safe. Gun safety, number one thing for us. So we are making sure that we are empty and clean. Again, nothing in the rifle right there. But when it comes time to this, you can teach youth gun safety. We've been working with everybody I've ever been with in the woods, especially youth on gun safety. Number one, we don't even load the gun until it's time to shoot an animal. So again, the gun's unloaded. But so many youth, when they get on the gun, you're at the range, they shoot good. Youth understand. They're not scared. They don't have an ego to prove. So they generally take advice very well, and they tend to shoot very well. All of a sudden, it seems like when you get in the woods, even if you worked with a youth, a very smooth trigger pull can sometimes turn into a jerky trigger pull when they're out there in the field. Again, excitement gets the most of them, and things can kind of go rough. So the biggest thing we work on is trigger pull. So when I get in the woods, so we'll go out here this weekend, when it gets daylight out there, before we actually encounter any animals, we're going to take the gun, totally unloaded. Again, nothing in the magazine, nothing in the chamber. But we'll have this youth, we'll have Jonathan get down on the gun, get on a stump, get on his shooting sticks, lay down, and we're actually going to pick a stump where we're totally safe, nothing's in harm, take that safety off, and I'm going to watch Jonathan have his trigger pull to where he's in his bulky clothes, where he's excited, he's outside, he's not on a range, and we're going to have him dry fire. And we're going to watch how he does that. We're going to watch if he jerks that trigger. I'm going to watch the barrel as the barrel move either way as he squeezes that trigger. And I'm going to watch this before actually a round is placed in the gun and he's actually shooting at an animal. And we're going to work on it then. If he jerks that trigger, if he jerks that the barrel, anything moves, we're going to get in the habit of fixing that real quick in the woods before I actually get on an animal. But again, for whatever reason, it seems like when all of a sudden you're in the woods, a lot of times everybody speeds up the process of the trigger pull itself, and a lot of times that can cause for a miss or a wound, and you want to get to the bottom of that immediately. So we're going to get out there Saturday, we're going to work on that trigger pull, and one thing that we talked with Jonathan just actually last night, we were talking about this. Now, I'm right-handed for the sake of the fact that I can barely draw or write as is. We're going to do it on the left hand. But the biggest thing that you see is so many people, when they get in the woods, will shoot with the very tip of their finger. And a lot of times, as a youth does that, again, not a trained finger, if a youth is shooting with just the tip of their finger, all of a sudden they're going to push the gun. So, again, you're shooting that right hand and you're using the very tip of your finger, so many times they're going to push the gun to the left as they're squeezing with the very tip of their finger, and again, causing a miss or a wound. And then so many youth also really grab the trigger right in that crease. So again, they have small fingers. Let's play the pin as the trigger. They'll put the trigger right in that crease and they're going to pull. So now all of a sudden you're pulling back to the right. So again, tip of the finger, you're pushing. The crease of that finger, you're pulling. So what I do and what I'm going to have Jonathan do here on Saturday is we're actually going to take a pin and we're going to mark his finger. So right there, I just took a pin and I marked the width of my trigger on the center of my finger. You can see it right there. So when we actually get out there in the woods, Jonathan's going to have a mark on his finger. All Jonathan has to do when he's actually out there hunting, guns unloaded, we're going to be sitting there, live round. He's looking at the elk, and I'm going to adjust that sight for him. We'll make sure everything is done for him. So all Jonathan has to do is focus. All your youth has to do is look at that animal. But when he actually puts that finger down on that trigger, I'm going to ask him, are your lines right? Again, that's all I'm asking. Are your lines right? And all of a sudden, that youth can say, man, and he's going to look down and he's going to say, they are. The lines that are literally drawn on his finger will be on the trigger. And it's just a quick way to reference if things are right. And the biggest thing that that's going to do, it's going to take away his nerves immediately. So now instead of being all worried about the animal, what's the animal doing? Am I going to hit him? Am I scared? How far is it? All he's thinking about, my lines. My lines on my finger are lined up on the trigger. Everything is smooth. And all of a sudden, he's thinking about the trigger squeeze. He forgets about everything else out there, and he's going to hammer that animal. So again, small things like that can lead to a more successful hunt. If you have a youth out there that has a gun tag, think about drawing a line on their trigger finger. Make sure that they're putting that line on the trigger for a very smooth squeeze instead of a jerky pull. Again, the tip of the finger is going to push the gun. The crease of the finger is going to pull the gun. Put that line right there in the center. It's going to cause a very easy squeeze, and more than likely, you're just going to be thinking about that and not about all the nerves and everything else that can go wrong. And all of a sudden, they're going to hit on target. They're going to have a successful hunt, and they're going to be stuck, just like all of us, and glued to the sport of hunting for the rest of their life. Again, make that first experience very memorable. Make it about them. It's not about you. It's about the youth. So again, if you have to hunt in the afternoon so it's warmer, do that. If you have to hunt in the afternoon so it's not an early start, do that. Make sure you make it all about them. Make it entertaining, successful or not, to where they want to do it again. And that's really going to lead to success of that young hunter for the rest of his life. Guys, again, we're running out of time. We got a lot more things. Next week, we're going to bring you live footage from our youth hunt this coming Saturday, Sunday. So we'll bring you footage from that. We're also going to talk about what you do when an animal's down. Again, talking about that. Imagine that. All of a sudden I'm successful. How do I do that? We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the unwritten rules of hunting as well. Hey, I pull up and there's other hunters in my spot. How do I deal with that type stuff? So again, we have a lot of stuff for you next week. So make sure you join me live again every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Pacific. Guys, I'm Nate Zielinski. A huge thanks, guys, to all of our partners here. Get everybody involved. Everybody showing this this show, building education. Everybody airing this, guys. Again, and we could not do it without Bowtech Archery. Huge thanks to Bowtech Archery for giving us their platform. Again, I'm Nate Zielinski. I will see you next weekend. Also, make sure you always go to Nate Zielinski on the Facebook page. We'll have more live content there of all of our hunts. But again, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Nate Zielinski. We'll see you next week.